next presentation is also going to be really neat and something that is different than what we're used to in a conference setting. The speaker is Josh Dalman, a recent Masters of Public Health graduate from SFU, whose background is in biology from UBC, and his work focuses on climate-related health risks, including wildfire smoke and extreme heat. He's been involved with what's called the Breathe Project, supporting the delivery of community-based workshops on practical adaptation strategies, such as a low-cost, do-it-yourself air cleaner. And what he's going to talk to us about, and I think demonstrate, is how you do a low-cost, do-it-yourself air cleaner. So I heard about this project, and I was just so curious that I couldn't resist inviting somebody there to show us how it works. So, all right.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that generous introduction. Hopefully it lives up to the hype. Yeah, like I was just said, my name is Josh Dahlman. I will be sharing today about the Breathe Project, or the Building Resilience to Emerging Airborne Threats and Heat Events. It is ran by Dr. Anne-Marie Nicole at Simon Fraser University, and we aim to engage communities by teaching people how to build these DIY air cleaners to improve their indoor air quality during wildfire smoke events, as well as provide some general knowledge about other airborne hazards and heat events that are also increasing during the summer months. Like it was said, I'm a recent Master of Public Health graduate from Simon Fraser University. I had the opportunity to join the Breathe team last summer during my practicum and travel around a lot of the province, delivering these workshops and connecting with communities in need. It was a very fulfilling experience for me. The Breathe Project and myself today, I would like to acknowledge that we are grateful to be based on the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Katzie, Coquitlam, Kaikat, Kwantlen, Semiahmoo, and Tsawwassen people, in addition to traveling around so many unceded and traditional territories across so-called BC. For generations, Indigenous communities across BC have practiced cultural burning, or small, carefully managed fires to help keep the land healthy. These traditional practices reflect a deep ecological knowledge and respect for the land, serving as a foundation for modern efforts to protect communities and promote clean air. And this important work continues on today. Recently, in September 2025, the Lil'wat Nation, who we actually had the opportunity to bring one of our workshops to before, along with the Lil'wat Forestry Ventures and support of the BC Wildfire Service, conducted a cultural burn adjacent to the Het'lola community of Mount Currie, approximately 60 kilometers northeast of Pemberton. So we hope that by combining this traditional knowledge with modern tools like we'll kind of share about today, we can work together to promote clean air, protect health, and build stronger, more resilient communities. The Breathe Project itself was started as a pilot in 2023, following a review of the efficacy of DIY air cleaners by the National Collaborating Center for Environmental Health. These DIY air cleaners were actually first developed as a response to COVID-19 in classrooms in the States, but the review of their efficacy for air filtration was very positive. And Dr. Nicole and Prem, who was a SFU undergraduate student at the time, started this project as a small pilot, bringing 20 workshops to Vancouver Coastal Health and the Fraser Health regions. The request for these workshops and the need for accessible, effective interventions to deal with air quality concerns quickly expanded over the next 2 years. And in total, I think it's well over 200 workshops that have been hosted now. Last year in 2025 alone, we hosted over 90 workshops in all health authority regions of the province and had over 600 people sign up for our post-workshop survey, and got 300 responses so far, which has been a great insight into the efficacy and the way that you can integrate with communities and help people build up resilience. Additionally, this work would not be feasible without the many partners and supporters we have had along the way. Our workshops are hosted at no cost to the participants, and despite the affordability of these units, which we'll talk about later, providing the materials, time, space, and volunteer support that actually needs to run these workshops have been generously donated by so many of these towns, organizations, foundations, and we're just very grateful for everybody that has supported our work along the way. To back it up a bit, as we've discussed many times today, and I'm sure everybody's noticed, our wildfire seasons are getting worse. This is considered to be the result of climate change and poor land use practices that create a landscape more prone to wildfires. The number of wildfires burnt in an average year in BC has surpassed record levels, and our worst wildfire seasons have occurred in the past 5 years. In 2022 and 2023, we saw some of the worst wildfires in Canadian history. And these extreme wildfire seasons are continuing. Just last summer, the 2025 wildfire season was declared the second worst in Canadian history. While we did not feel the impacts of it as much in the lower mainland, I'm sure we saw the coverage in the news of the prairies basically just all being on fire in northern BC, dealing with the effects of that smoke as it moves up over the Rockies and gets sucked in there. And wildfire smoke doesn't just impact nearby communities. It can actually travel hundreds or thousands of kilometers. That's why when there's a fire in the Okanagan, it's orange here, right? And so I'm sure many of us have remembered those days where you wake up in the orange fog, the orange haze. And this smoke can create prolonged impacts on air quality that affect populations near and far. So in response to this, the Breathe team wanted to provide people with a way to reduce their exposure to wildfire smoke and harmful effects in their homes. Additionally, like we've discussed many times today, these are occurring at the same time that extreme heat events are occurring. So such as the heat dome in 2021, there was also a big wildfire season that year. And this kind of ties to the second aspect of our project of addressing these heat events and how dealing with extreme heat at the same time of poor air quality can make both of those airborne threats and the heat events more challenging. Because what are the health impacts of wildfire smoke and heat? You know, it starts with these mild symptoms, and these can impact people of all varying levels, and especially those with pre-existing health conditions that can worsen the effect. But start with mild symptoms of eye irritation, throat and nose irritation, runny nose, wheezy breathing, and headaches. It can quickly escalate to shortness of breath, dizziness, chest pain, heart palpitations, and have long-term exposure effects on fetal development and impact of those with pre-existing medical conditions. A larger reason for that is that the particles in the smoke, which are called PM 2.5, the very small particles that these DIY air cleaners address thanks to the filter we use, when they enter your lungs, they can then enter your bloodstream because of their size, and that contributes to those long-term effects. And the impacts of wildfire smoke can disproportionately impact older adults as they have higher prevalence of cardiovascular and respiratory conditions. They have an increased sensitivity to those PM 2.5 exposures, often spend more time indoors, so there's a higher cumulative exposure when it is poor air quality, and potentially deal with limited access to cooling and filtration, and potentially social isolation, people not checking up on them during heat events. Therefore, safe air practices, including these portable air cleaners, play a crucial role in reducing exposure to wildfire smoke in home settings, especially for our priority populations. What do they say to do when it's smoky? They say stay indoors, reduce outdoor exercise, wear an N95 mask, ensure your medications are filled so you're not taking a trip and exposing yourself more, or find clean air spaces in your community. Ultimately, indoor air is an intervention point that we can't control. And so none of these recommendations then are going to be effective if that air isn't clean. Indoor environments are often not protected, and ultimately that's the gap. Many homes lack proper air conditioning, air filtration, or adequate mechanical ventilation, and people have limited access to clean air spaces. And that's what's resulting in prolonged exposure or lack of protections. And the spaces that are supposed to be safe is where they tell you to go when it's smoky to avoid it. So what do? We clean the indoor air. And that's where our intervention comes in. How can you clean the indoor air? There's some tiered ways we can approach this, adding a MERV 13 filter to your existing furnace. That's the exact furnace filter that we'll be using today on these DIY air cleaners. There's the portable commercial air cleaners, which have their own problems, but with that, you need to keep your windows and doors closed. These DIY air cleaners are a much more affordable option. Some of these portable Cleaners can cost in the hundreds of dollars. They have proprietary technology filters that, when they need to be replaced, cost $50, $60, $70, $80. We'll go over the cost of this here, but everything you see on the table right there, which is enough, and they work just as well, costs about $80. And those filters, we need to replace them, $10, $15 to spend, depending on the time of year, if you buy them in a bundle. So that really elevates the efficacy and how long-term these can last. A bit back to the why DIY air cleaners and that study that we talked about in 2023, the National Collaborating Center for Environmental Health compared the performance of a cleaner like this with those commercial units I just talked about, and they found they were equally as effective, if not more than some of them. They usually work pretty effectively this size, up to like a 400 square foot room, which is kind of like a large bedroom, living room, dining room, that sort of thing, and you can move it around your house as needed. So while some homes and offices and other buildings may have incorporated air filtration systems, they are often much more expensive and not accessible for many. So that's where the idea of creating these DIY air cleaners came from. And, that's what they found, the DIY air cleaners, that when they are built using the recommended materials, which we'll talk about very shortly, perform as well as many of the commercial HEPA air purifiers in removing fine particulate matter from wildfire smoke, but also traffic-related air pollution, dust, pollen, pet dander, mold spores, and even bacteria and viruses at a significantly lower cost. So to us, this demonstrated that these DIY air cleaners are scientifically supported. They're an affordable option for improving indoor air quality for those who might not be able to afford a commercial unit. And this led to our actual intervention of these community engagement workshops. So the BREED project, through community engagement workshops, aims to help individuals, particularly those most vulnerable to wildfire smoke, protect their indoor air quality and health during climate-related events. The project teaches participants how to build a DIY air cleaner using these accessible and affordable materials, and provides an opportunity for people to connect, share their experiences about wildfires, smoky days, heat events, and really build community resilience climate resilience at a community level. This project ultimately does utilize the health equity lens in particular to extend adaptation and resilience skills and capacity to vulnerable populations who are unlikely to be served by internet-based or more traditional public health advertising and messaging. So those that would otherwise not be able to access an intervention to clean their indoor air. Briefly, the workshop logistics kind of look like this. We partner with a community hub or community center, organization, library. We register participants beforehand. It takes approximately 2 hours, and we need some time to set it all up. We're going to be trying a very amended version of this with some of the supplies you see on the table in front of you, but the idea that you'll see how easy it is and that you can bring it into your communities as well, and bring it to your family members and those you might find it in need. We have all the resources available we'll talk about later in our Train the Trainer model as well. A little bit about the actual selected unit. It is a box fan you can see in front of you. It has to have an appropriate power level. It has a filter on it and a bunch of duct tape. And really that's it. It's easy for participants to build. It's easy to transport home. It creates adequately sized clean air spaces in the home. Like I said, usually a large bedroom, a living room, kitchen. You can move it around your house as needed. And if you do that, you can actually eventually kind of clean the whole house depending on the size. But the required building materials for this altogether right now cost about $85. Like I said, in comparison to lots of those commercial units, can be in the hundreds of dollars, especially in those smoky months when they actually jack up the prices a little bit. So yeah, that is our fan there. The specific materials that you have out in front of you are this 80-watt fan, a MERV 13 air filter, which is realistically the most important part about it. MERV 13 is the level of filtration needed to deal with those PM 2.5 particles that can actually go to your lungs and then into your bloodstream, causing those more long-term effects. Some things of note, if you are ever interested in running a workshop, you can also reach out to us. We have our Train the Trainer model and can help you with that as well, and provide kind of the know-how to get around it. But if you bulk buy these filters, they can actually cost like $7 a filter or less. So if you're going to be doing it for a few people, it's always a good way to do it. Yeah, and lots of the times we build it with new and expectant mothers, younger families as well. So decorating becomes a super fun part about it as well. A little bit of art in the science and the intervention there. The filter itself usually needs to be replaced about 1 to 3 months during a wildfire season. Kind of depends like how smoky it is, where you are. Also, we find people by really busy roads or construction sites, their filter also gets very dirty. I'll talk about a little bit later on the amazing opportunity I had this summer to go with the First Nations Health Authority and their health emergency management team to a lot of those communities up in the Forest Service roads, and they're all dusty and they're all gravelly, and this was also helping them as well. There was another study that was showing that it can also filter lots of that like silica particulates that get off from the roads. So they have multiple uses. The filters, like I said, cost anywhere from $10 to $30 sometimes, but generally they're about $10 to $15, and bulk buying also makes them a lot cheaper. So this price point of replacement filters contributes to the longevity of this intervention. The filter itself, just being a normal furnace filter with a specific filtration rating, means that it is not a proprietary technology owned by some private company that is at risk of no longer being accessible, which is a story that we've actually heard at workshops where somebody bought a filter in hopes of using it. A year later, the company was out, so they just had a fancy piece of garbage in their house, basically. The filter here is actually a picture from a user who had a wood stove in their home. They realized it was leaking because, as you can see, the filter got very dirty very fast. They were able to get the wood stove fixed, but also they continued to use it even afterwards because in those winter months when they were using the wood stove to heat their home, this was still filtering the air. So there is some other scenarios that we find they're also effective. To date, like I said, we have conducted workshops all over BC. In 2025, we hosted over 90 workshops across every health authority region. Our current target populations are lung and heart patient groups, lower income, older adults, pregnant people, rural remote communities, and renters, because ultimately the interventions that are more established in the building, they might not have access to or the ability to afford those more expensive options. Here are just some of our past workshops that we were able to attend this past year up in Fort St. John's, over on the island, and just nearby at New Westminster Century House. Next, I wanted to highlight some of our amazing partners we've been able to work with during the project. This past summer, like I said, had the opportunity to partner with First Nations Health Authority, their Vancouver Coastal Health Emergency Management team. I was incredibly lucky to be granted the opportunity to be welcomed and bring our workshops into many of the rural and remote communities that they serve. These communities are often facing an outsized impact from wildfire smoke, extreme heat events, and other climate-induced impacts. But as discussed earlier, they have also been the faithful and resilient stewards of this land since time immemorial, and bringing their knowledge into the resurgence and practice of controlled burns and combining it with effective interventions like these air cleaners. We hope we can work together to promote clean air, protect health, and build stronger, more resilient communities across the province. These are some of the amazing places I was welcomed into this summer. Communities of Lekamal, Huckshaw, Samakam, Skatine, Tsleil-Waututh, Naquaqua, and Wekanu. And it was really empowering as well, just to see the effect that you can have when you go into a community that is facing this outsized burn and not having the resources provided often to them. Yeah, it was amazing. I learned a lot during that time. Next, I wanted to highlight Rick Medley. Rick is a president of the Better Breathers Club in Abbotsford. He attended one of our workshops as he was living with a diagnosis of pulmonary fibrosis, and he understood the importance of having a very clean air environment. He really enjoyed our workshop. He came back to us and he said he would like to contribute more and purchase materials for the additional air cleaners for kids who attended the BC Lung Foundation's asthma camps in the summer. He's continued to do that each year, now donating enough materials for each of the kids that attend to build their own air cleaners, and we are just very grateful for his support and advocacy in this space. This past year, he was actually awarded the Dr. Peter Pear Award in Lung Health Excellence in 2025, and it's because of people like Rick that we're able to reach populations and serve communities in need, and our project gets shared and it reaches those that need it. So we're very grateful for Rick's continued collaboration with us. Finally, I wanted to share about our longstanding partnership with the emergency management team of the City of New Westminster. They've been a significant supporter of the program and bringing them into the populations in the city, particularly through Century House, which is an excellent senior center with a focus on holistic service delivery. So they provide a diverse array of services, and they help bring our workshops there many times over the years. I think it was 4 times last year we hosted workshops as well, and building off of that and recruiting some of the participants that came to our workshops here, we also ran this extreme heat coffee and chat. And with that, we integrated our heat pilot program. I'm just now realizing my titles are kind of cut off. Well, okay. In addition to the support that they've had for the DIY air cleaners workshops, they then also collaborated with us to address the concerns of those extreme heat events. Reflecting again on the 2021 heat dome, the city of New Westminster was, in its population, was the most significantly affected. And so we ran this indoor temperature monitoring pilot program in the summer of 2025. We had a couple of educational workshops and a follow-up survey that we recruited participants to. They received a cooling kit, a towel, ice pack, and a large indoor thermometer. Participants were ultimately asked to place this thermometer where they slept every night and record the temperature. So through this small follow-up survey we conducted as part of this pilot study, we asked them, like I said, to track their indoor temperature every night for it was about 3 months after they attended one of these workshops. And we wanted to note if it went over 26 degrees Celsius in the room they were staying in, as this is considered the threshold for safety, the beginning of the danger zone for many vulnerable populations, particularly during prolonged heat events. Of note, we found that participants averaged over 20 nights above 26 degrees Celsius when they went to bed. And we also did some check-ins if any of this led to behavioral change, being more aware of their heat in their home and what they can do about it. There was a lot of reports of, people drank more water, they avoided cooking, they checked their indoor temperature as much as they could. And if they lived alone, they had people to check in on, and that kind of built up as well. So this was just like an interesting kind of small pilot study about how do you actually, they knew people were in danger, they knew people were getting harmed because of this heat, but nobody was really tracking it. Nobody really had numbers saying, well, this many people are dealing with the danger zone basically every night. So this was kind of our small attempt to address that, and we were able to actually share this with the City of New Westminster's emergency management team after, and it played a small part, we were told, in the advocacy that resulted in a set of new bylaws that will require landlords to maintain safe temperatures in at least one room of a renter-occupied apartment. So these changes require landlords to keep at least one room at least below a temperature of 26 degrees or lower, measured between 8 p.m. and 8 p.m., as this was roughly assessed in our pilot study. So it's promising to see actual actions being taken to protect people in the face of these emerging environmental threats. And I think it also shows just how a little bit of advocacy and a little bit of work can go a long way to hopefully better populations in these cities. The Breathe Project, like I said, expanded a lot in 2025 outside of the air cleaner workshops and the heat workshops. It was over 90 workshops held, 1,700 DIY air cleaners built. We reached all health regions, as you can see. And had a good amount of people consent to come follow up in our survey, which we also have a few notable findings to share that'll be relevant, I think, to the Train the Trainer program, is that getting people home, despite 43% of people using a vehicle to get home with their unit, some people did transit and walked, a pretty significant portion. I think that just shows to us that this is something you can kind of carry home. We can build a handle for you on the box, throw it over your shoulder. Only weighs a couple pounds, but it's not some big thing that you have to lug around with you. Additionally, most people found it easy to very easy, maybe a little bit of effort to build it, but that's where a lot of our volunteers and the staff we have come in as well to make this accessible. But I think this is kind of what we're most proud about, is that this really is not just an effective intervention, but also to do it potentially yourself and go out and share with others is also easy. And that's kind of where the Train the Trainer model comes in, because the spread of our program and its positive reception and ultimately the calls that we just can't match due to funding and time and availability, This led to the development of our Train the Trainer workshop model with its accompanying guide. It was created to equip community leaders to host their own DIY air cleaner workshops. So by connecting with emergency disaster management teams, environmental health experts, educators, and public health officials, municipalities, and other leaders in communities, we are able to share our skills and experience in hosting these workshops and hopefully empower communities to build resilience and climate change in theirs. So that's through this, the impact of the Breathe project is able to increase much further than our small team ever could. Our project was ultimately designed to increase access to effective interventions against wildfire smoke and other airborne pollutants. So by enabling leaders across the province to host these own workshops, we hope that more communities will benefit from this initiative. On our website, if you're interested in this and wanting to potentially host a small workshop in your community, we have our Train the Trainer guides. They're available in a full detail, everything you need to know. They're also available in some of these other languages of English, Spanish, Punjabi, and Chinese, as well as a rural, remote, and First Nations edition that was developed in collaboration with the First Nations Health Authority, Vancouver Coastal Health Emergency Management Team, taking on some of those learnings and the different challenges that you have to address when you're working with communities that don't have the same level of access to just go to a Home Depot, and what that looks like to get the materials to them and still provide this intervention. So yeah, that's all on our site for anybody. Same thing with all of these resources. We have full instructions in 12 languages, any safety considerations, infographics and workshop posters, and longer and shorter videos if needed by anybody there. I do have a brief video. This is a short documentary. It was made by our communications team. We'll hear from Dr. Anne-Marie Nicole and other team members, as well as a few participants' experiences in the workshop.
Hello, I'm Anne-Marie. I'm an associate professor in the Faculty of Health Sciences at Simon Fraser University. We've created a series of workshops that we've held all the way from the west end of Vancouver into the interior health region. They're a fun way for people to get together and learn more about indoor air quality, fire smoke, and then people have an opportunity to make their own DIY air cleaner to take home with them for free.
I'm Julie Russell. I live here in Oliver, and I'm currently president of the Oliver Senior Center. I have COPD, so I really struggle when there's smoke in the air. And I live in a fairly small apartment, so I don't have a whole lot of floor space and space for things I don't need. This is something I need.
My name's Riley Condon. I am an undergraduate student in the Faculty of Health Science at Simon Fraser University, and I'm a research assistant on the Breathe project. I think it's important to connect with people in the workshops because there is a lot of climate anxiety going on right now with the increase in wildfires throughout the summer months.
I'm Stephanie Cleland, and I'm an assistant professor in the Faculty of Health Sciences at Simon Fraser University, as well as a research scientist at the Legacy for Airway Health at the Vancouver Coastal Health Research Institute. Wildfire smoke can affect our health in a lot of different ways. This includes things like increasing the risk of having an asthma attack if you have asthma, or increasing the risk of having a heart attack or cardiac arrest. There's a lot of good actions that people can take to reduce their exposure to smoke. Running something like an air cleaner can also really help. So if you close your doors and windows and then run an air cleaner, that can filter out a lot of the particles that are in smoke that affect our health.
My name is Katya Tynan, and I'm the manager of Resilience and Disaster Risk Reduction with the City of Vancouver. I decided to support the project because at the City of Vancouver, we like to say that community resilience is based on collaborative problem solving, community care, and built at the speed of trust. I think this program really embodies that messaging.
My name is Prem Gandara, and I'm the project coordinator for the Breathe project. Our project partners with regional districts, municipalities, health authorities, and nonprofit organizations. You can find our project resources at bclung.ca/DIY air cleaners.
We do a lot of work with academic partners and researchers at the City of Vancouver, and I can pretty confidently say that this is the best one I've ever been a part of. SFU has been amazing to work with, and I really appreciate how much they're focusing on community-engaged research in this project.
Hello, I'm
There we go. Okay. Gave me a little bit of a break from speaking. So yeah, in summary about our projects, we find many communities are concerned about fire smoke, extreme heat, and the effects on their health. There's added concerns about smoke and heat. How do you navigate that? Anxiety in those with lung and heart conditions, and people are ultimately looking for solutions. Breathe workshops are well attended and well received. We continue to get requests for them right now, despite a sad lack of funding, but DIY air cleaners are also always very appreciated, simple enough for most people to make, which we hopefully will show you soon, and follow-up filters for replacement are relatively affordable and beneficial. We believe that partnerships and planning are the two ingredients to a successful workshop and an intervention like this at the community level. So yeah, with that, thank you. It is now your turn. At your tables, you'll see that you have all the required materials. I have the big instructions up here. There's small instructions down there. You can work in groups. Afterwards, if you would like to take one home, feel free. If there's any left over, I'll just bring them to one of our community partners. I'll be walking around and helping everybody out, but I hope that through this way, you'll see that it's a relatively easy intervention, something that you can bring to your community. You can use our resources available and share it with others that might be in need. Yeah, so I'll be walking around, and thank you.